slide. I have shared your slide. Proceed.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Okay.
Proceed.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Aishwarya. I'm a postgraduate under Professor Dr. Lakshmi Velmurugan Ma'am's unit from Institute of Child Health and Hospital for Children. Today, I will be presenting a topic, looking back and moving forward. Next slide. A 4-month-old child who was a firstborn of third-degree consanguineous marriage presented with complaints of right focal seizures with multiple episodes of vomiting for the past 5 days. History of presenting illness. The child was apparently normal up until 1 month back when he developed multiple episodes of fisting with intermittent fever on and off for the past 1 month. History of paucity of movements of the right upper limb and lower limb for that 1 month was present. No other provoking factors like loose stools, ear discharge, recent vaccination, dog bite, head trauma, or toxins were present. The antenatal history and birth history of the child were uneventful. Developmental history, social smile was attained by the child. Head control was not even partly attained by the child. The child was immunized up to 2.5 months vaccine. There was no history of contact with open case of tuberculosis. Treatment history, for the above complaints, the child had been receiving outpatient-based treatment with oral antibiotics, was also started on oral anti-epileptic for the past 1 month at Andhra Pradesh. Now, since the child developed multiple episodes of focal seizures, the child was taken to a private hospital where he was loaded with 3 AEDs and still the seizures were persisting. He was intubated in view of refractory status epilepticus and poor sensorium, and hence he was referred here. On examination, the child was received in an intubated state. He had pallor. The other general examination findings were not present, and his systemic examination was also normal. CNS, the child was pain responsive. His DEM was intact. Pupils were equally reacting to light. BCG scar was plus, and perfusion and heart rate were normal. His initial investigations showed CBC showed mild neutrophilic leukocytosis. ESR was 9 millimeters per hour with CRP of 24 microgram per deciliter. His renal and liver parameters were normal, and his metabolic parameters like serum calcium and blood sugars were normal. So now we were not able to favor a diagnosis of both. At this point, we were able to make a diagnosis that child had subaracute meningoencephalitis, but it was not favoring what infection it was based on the preliminary investigations. His initial imaging showed the presence of obstructive hydrocephalus. So the child was taken up by the neurosurgeons for VP shunt. Post-procedure, the vitals were stabilized. Post-procedure also, the child had persistent focal seizures with focal neurological deficit. His MRI picture showed multiple ring-enhancing lesions as seen in this picture at multiple levels at the pons, medulla, cervicomedullary junction, cisterna magna, which were noted along with the obstructive hydrocephalus. So a provisional diagnosis of query abscess or query tuberculoma was arrived at this point. Further investigations at this point, the CSF which was obtained during the VP shunt insertion showed the protein level was 11 milligram per deciliter, glucose 78 milligram per deciliter. Cytology, it was a clear CSF fluid with occasional RBCs. So CSF findings were also not contributory to either bacterial meningitis or CNS tuberculosis. His MAD2 was negative at this point, and CSF CBNAT also turned out to be negative. So we were in a diagnostic dilemma if it was a case of CNS tuberculosis or a case of brain abscess. Points favoring CNS tuberculosis and brain abscess were actually overlapping because both can present with a subacute history. The child can present with focal neurological deficit, and MRI showing obstructive hydrocephalus with multiple ring enhancing lesions, which could be tuberculoma. But for brain abscess, since the child had a pontine abscess, that could also cause obstructive hydrocephalus. So the multiple ring enhancing lesions could be brain abscess as well. Points against CNS tuberculosis was the child was a well-thriving child with a weight of 7 kgs for a 4-month-old. There were no known contacts, and CSF findings were not attributable towards CNS tuberculosis. For brain abscess also, the location was a less common site. It was in the brain stem. There was no obvious focus of infection, and again, the CSF findings were not attributable. At this point, we had, because of the moribund status of the child with persistent seizures and poor sensorium, we started the child on empirical ATT as well as IV antibiotics that would cover the brain abscess. So what happened differently was, after VP shunt, when we examined the child again, on looking behind, the child had a sinus opening at the nape of neck with surrounding erythema. It turned out to be a congenital dermal sinus, which was the source of brain abscess. The sinus was initially not visible because it was covered by the presence of hair, because of its site, as well as it did not have any discharge externally. It was visible only after tonsuring the hair for VP shunt. So on moving forward, MRI sagittal cuts delineated a tract which was communicating right from the skin outside up to the occipital lobe, where we were able to make out the ring enhancing lesions, which was a source of abscess. So this picture shows us the tract which was present from the nape of the neck on the skin. The ostium was present on the skin outside up to the intradural space. The sinus tract was extending. The second picture shows the presence of those ring enhancing lesions at the end of that fistulous tract. After the diagnosis of congenital dermal sinus, the CSF culture sensitivity revealed micrococci growth. The child has been planned to receive IV antibiotics for a total duration of 6 weeks. So what is congenital dermal sinus? It is an innocuous appearing form of spinal dysraphism, which is formed due to a defective separation of ectoderm and neuroderm during the embryonic period that results in a focal segmental adhesion. It is usually lined by stratified squamous epithelium. Externally, it usually presents as an ostium in the midline neuraxis, which is usually obscured by a hairy patch or a skin nevus or a capillary hemangioma. In our case, initially, because of the presence of hair, it was not visible. Post-tonsure, the ostium was actually surrounded by a capillary hemangioma. The most common site for congenital dermal sinus is in the lumbosacral region, whereas the least common site is in the occipital region. In our case, it was in the occipital region. Next slide. Termination of the sinus tract. Usually 7% of cases will terminate dorsal to the spinal elements, which will not cause any infection. 10 to 20% can terminate in the extradural space, but 60% of the cases will terminate in the intradural space, and sometimes they can be associated with the presence of a dermoid cyst inside. So this sinus will provide an avenue for entry of bacteria that will lead to bacterial meningitis and recurrent brain abscesses. The congenital dermal sinus is usually commonly diagnosed using MRI. Treatment is always complete resection of the sinus tract, and at the same time, exploration of the intrathecal compartment for any additional malformations like diastematomyelia at the same time must be done, and repair must be done. Always the prognosis depends upon the repair of the sinus tract even before the occurrence of infections. So these are all literature evidence which shows the presence of occipital dermal sinus associated with the cerebellar abscess. Next slide. The presence of this article shows that the micrococcus, even though it is considered as a common skin contaminant, in the presence of either an immunocompromised state or a presence of a dermal sinus, it can very well cause brain abscess in the child. The organism is Micrococcus luteus. By the end of 4 weeks, we can see that this MRI was first picture is before the treatment, and by the end of 4 weeks, repeat MRI was taken. Neurosurgical intervention was not done because of the location of the abscess at the posterior fossa. So we took a repeat imaging to see how the child is responding to our IV antibiotics. This second picture shows very well that there has been a regression in the size of lesions, and the general condition of the child as seen in this picture also improved. The child has attained partial head control, and the social smell, which was initially lost, has also been attained again. So the take-home message from this case, it is that dermal sinus tracts, although uncommon, should always be looked for, especially in a child with cryptogenic brain abscess when we cannot make out a focus. External examination always plays a vital role in moving forward. It may not be obvious always. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sir, the Reni's back